Hello, my name is Raymond Robinson and I'm a product manager here at Horizon Hobby. And today we're going to show you how to replace the spur gear, adjust the slipper, and also set the gear mesh on the Kemora and Kalahari. The tools that you're going to need today is you're going to need a 2.5 millimeter hex wrench, a 1.5 millimeter hex wrench, 5.5 millimeter wheel wrench. You're going to need also a pair of pliers, a piece of paper, and a pair of scissors. Today, I'm going to be using a drill to make the process go a lot faster. So I would say let's get started and enjoy. Okay, let's get started. First thing we're going to do is remove the top deck. So I'm going to remove the screws off the top deck. I'm going to do that. Don't worry too much if some of them fall over. Just make sure you get all of them loose. And what we're going to do now is we're going to move this over to the side, just like that. The next thing you want to do is let's get some of those screws out. I'm going to move those screws over to the side. So the next thing you want to do is, to make this job a lot easier, is remove the rear wheels, and also first we're going to remove the rear wheels. I'm going to show you. I'm going to take your driver, just like this. Just going to take it off, just like that. Very easy. What I like to do is set the wheels underneath the chassis. Usually I like to bunch my screws up. So top deck screws go all together. And I'm going to remove just the top part of the shocks, just like that. And I'm going to put that to the side. I'm going to put this to the side. Another tip is to, when you remove those, put the nuts back on, just like that, so you won't lose them. And plus, these might slide off. These spacers might slide off, so that'll keep them on. Next step, so we're going to put that back, is to remove the links. This is a very easy step. Needle nose pliers make it very easy to do. And all you need to do is remove just one side. You don't need to remove both sides. There we go. Just a little bit. So now we have this. It's ready to get to. We're going to remove the top diff case area right here. So there's a few screws we got to get to. It's not too bad. So now, see how easy that is? Everything stays in place. And now you can get to the slipper assembly. So I'm going to move this to the side. It's very important that you don't lose any pieces. Make sure your work area is nice and neat. Now this is the spur gear and slipper assembly. Now that we've got the slipper assembly out of the vehicle, I'm going to disassemble it, and I'm going to show you how to reassemble it. In the kit, well, in the box, you will get 3 spur gears. You'll get a 58 tooth, a 60 tooth, and a 62 tooth. Just in case you strip a spur gear, you're going to have to take it apart and put it back together again and put the spur gear in. So I'm going to show you just tearing it apart, how to do it correctly, and how to set the slipper correctly. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the front drive cup. The next thing we're going to do is we have to take this nut off. What I recommend that you do is take a paper towel and hold the bevel gear at this end with a paper towel. It just makes it easier, and it won't hurt your fingers when you do this. Now you're going to put the nut on. You're going to take this and you're going to turn it just like that. Loosen it up. That's all you got to do. Put that to the side. Out of the way. Now we're going to remove the nut. Now you have these washers here, and these washers are stacked in a certain way. You have one washer that is wavy, and then you have 2 flat washers, and I'm going to show you what these look like, and they have to go back in the correct positions. So you have the top, you have the wavy washer that goes in the middle, and you have the bottom washer. These have to go in this configuration. So the next thing you need to do is remove the bearing. That should slide right off. As you can see, I'm putting everything in a line, so it'll help you out when you're removing everything. The next part is we're going to remove the slipper. This might be a little bit, there we go. A little bit of force needed. So that's there. Then you have the slipper pad. Then you have the spur gear assembly. And you can leave this part together. You don't have to take that apart. But be careful that this little drive pin doesn't fall out on the floor. So make sure you work over a work mat or an area that it won't fall off the table. Now, it's very important that these pieces go back together the way they came apart. The big thing is the way the slipper pads sit inside the spur. So they have to sit flush. So you have to make sure when this goes together, as you can see, you got to make sure it sits flush. And I hold that flat, just like that, so it doesn't move. Then I put the top slipper back on, as you can see. Just take your time, no need to rush. Now you can see here what happened there. That slipper came out, and it'll happen from time to time. That's why you have to take your time when reassembling this. Now, I'm going to put the bearing back on. And we're going to put the washers back in. So remember, they have to go back in this order. Flat washer, wavy washer, and another flat washer. Then the lock nut. So first of all, you're going to put it on and you're going to kind of like finger tight until it gets too tight. We're going to go back to the towel so you can get a firm grip. And just turn, just like that. Now, what I'm going to do is, what I like to do here is I like to tighten it all the way down, Because if it's, you can tell if the slipper's too loose, you'll hear the car will slip and then it'll pick up speed and it'll take off slowly. So what I like to do is first I like to check, make sure everything's tight. It's tightened down. The slipper pads are not sticking out. It's sitting in the recess of the spur gear. Now this is tight. You cannot move the spur gear. So what I like to do is I'm going to loosen up the nut until I get the spur gear to slip, just like this. So see how that's turning? That's slipping. So that's too loose. So I'm going to tighten it back down just a little bit at a time, just like that. And it's a little bit tighter. I like to where you have to force it to turn. So not very easy, but you have to apply pressure to get it to turn. So there's some resistance in there. Remember, too loose is bad. Too tight is bad also. If it's all the way tight, what'll happen is that the car will take off, you'll hit the brakes, and all that force will cause the spur gear to strip, and you do not want that. What you want it to do is, you want it to, when you hit the brake, it'll just slow down, and it has some slip in there. So that's perfectly adjusted right there. So remember, tighten it all the way down, then back off. See, when the spur gear is slipping very easily, you need to tighten it down until you get some force, where you have to force to turn it. And that's it. So we're going to put the drive cut back on. I'm going to tighten this down. Sometimes I would recommend that you add a drop of Loctite in here every time you take this apart, because sometimes they do back out. That grub screw will back out. So some Loctite might be needed. These already have Loctite on them, but after a while, if you've taken it on and off several times, you might have to reapply Loctite. So there's the assembly. The next step we're going to do is say you go to a larger spur gear size and you have to readjust your pinion. So I'm going to turn this around this way so you guys can see. So you see here, this is the motor and this is the motor mount assembly. And what you need to do is, there's two screws here and here. You need to loosen these. Loosen that up too. Just like that. And make sure that is loose so you can adjust it back and forth. That should move back and forth. Not a lot, but just a little bit. So I'm going to put the spur gear and slipper assembly back inside the car. And remember, take your time on this. It's not a rush, unless you really want to get out there and have some fun. What I do is I'll take a piece of paper, any piece of paper will do, as long as it's not cardboard or anything. Post-it note is perfect. What I do is I cut it into about an inch strip, just like that. Just like that. That's all you need. And what I'm going to do is, this step is very important. I'm going to make the screw snug, just a little bit. Don't tighten them all the way down. What I want to do is, I'm going to put this piece of paper, I'm going to back this off just a little bit, make it a little bit loose. I'm going to put this piece of paper in between the pinion and the spur. And I'm going to turn it, just like that. It'll go right down in there. Actually, it'll just come around and flop up. I'm going to press the pinion and the spur together, just like that. And I'm going to tighten it down. You ask why you need a piece of paper. Well, this piece of paper will give you the proper spacing between the pinion and the spur. And that helps you set the gear mesh. If it's too far away from the spur, you're going to strip it. If it's too tight, what you're going to do is that it's going to feel as you're going to get this high pitched whine, and you can tell that the pinion and spur are too tight together, which causes battery drain, excessive battery loss, and it'll also heat up your motor. So you really don't want that. You want the perfect mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the spur gear just like that, and you can see it's coming through. Now you can see very smooth, spaced, it's not moving. I'm going to check this again to make sure these are tight, just like that. Now, I'm going to reassemble the top deck area. Before we put the top deck back on and secure it with the screws, there's one piece that's very important, and that's this bearing retainer. This right here. This holds the bearing in place. And if you don't put this in, the spur gear can move up and down, and also the shaft. And that will also cause stripping. So you got to make sure that this goes in before you secure the top deck. Now, this goes in only one way. You see, you have these little small pins, and you have this little indentation area where the bearing sits, is seated. What you want to do is, see how that's orientated? We're going to slip this in, just like this. It only goes in one way. Just like that. And that's in there. Just remember, this retainer has to go in before you secure the top deck, or you will strip the spur gear out. And then now we're going to re-secure the top deck. Make sure it's nice and smooth. It's not binding. And it's free. So if it's too tight, you'll know it. If it's too loose, you'll know it because you'll strip a spur gear. Remember, take your time, make sure all the parts go back where they're supposed to go, and enjoy your vehicle. Thank you very much, and have a great race day.